Welcome to our PD session for today with on alignment, making those connections. We'll be going back and forth the Padlet several times during the session. So if you haven't had a chance to go in there and post your comments, please feel free to go ahead. So our session for today is about alignment and what it takes to make those connections for our students within the course. And just as a FYI to get you started, we are using WebEx, and WebEx is the collaborative link available to us through Canvas. And when you go in there to set one up for your class, you will have the option of doing several different formats. Typically, for doing one for the whole class, you would do click on Training Center to set up a session, a synchronous session for your class. And what we are using for this one is the Event Center, so that you signed in as you joined in the session. And when we're in WebEx, here's the who's who list in WebEx. We have a host who today is Jade, our moderator and host, and she's the one who's communicating with you in the chat room and will unmute your mic if you want to make a comment. So please feel free. I think she has a message up there where you click the hand if you want to speak during the session, and I'm totally inviting you to do so during all of this. This is an interactive session. As a presenter, I am sharing my screen and can speak freely, and as participants, you can chat in the chat room, and Jade will be happy to unmute you to speak. So that's our WebEx information center for today. So through today's session, we're going to review some of the strategies that we use to plan our courses and plan our activities and assessments throughout the course. We're going to give some thought to those action verbs that we use when we're writing objectives. We're going to think about how our course flows and what we can do to make it flow a little bit better. We're going to identify how the course, the components of your course is connected, and then we give you a chance to create a sample module. If you've already been into the Padlet, that's that question number 4, and then we'll get to that closer to the end of the session. So let's get started. So I was looking at this as kind of a journey. So my first question for you is, where do you begin when you are planning this? So let's take a look at the Padlet. Okay, and we haven't had any responses, so I'm going to give you a chance to either respond or raise your hand and speak up in class in the session. Where do you start when you're planning a course, and how does that work for you? So we start with the end in mind, and what are the key objectives? So if whoever wrote that would put your name or initials or something up there, so that we know who we're chatting with. Planning with the end in mind, and that's exactly where we are headed today. Lisa, thank you for that. What are the objectives that align to the program objectives? And okay, so there's our PD session for today. Thank you. Anybody else want to add to that? Where do you start when you're thinking about building a course? What's the first thing that you think about? What comes into mind for you? and how does that work? How does that work for you? Clearly, Lisa works it with the concepts of backward design, and we're going to be talking about that. Any other comments? All right, so let's go back then to where we were. So we've talked about where we begin, and you're thinking about where you begin. So what if you could create something that allows you to know immediately if your learners got it? What might that look like? So we give you a chance to either raise your hand, or we can go back into the Padlet if you wanted to jot some questions. Well, we're going to go back to the Padlet in the next slide. So, what would it look like if you could create something so that you would know immediately that your learners are with you and got what you wanted them to get out of it? Any comments, questions?
Lisa has one.
Okay, thank you. Did you open up her mic for her?
Yeah, Lisa, you should be unmuted.
Oh, fantastic. Yes. Hello, Judy.
Hi, Lisa. How are you?
I'm well. I was excited about today's PD session.
Well, obviously, you're right in sync with it.
I am. It's not often that I'm in sync with things, so this is a good thing. It's the beginning of a good week.
All right. Let's start.
So I think, and I'm going to generalize a bit. I think all of us want to provide the best experience for our students, and as a content subject expert teaching a course that you are very familiar with, I find it better for my students if I provide activities for them that come right from the source, right from the workplace. Okay. So, for example, teaching courses on education. Depending on the level of the course, right? I like having my students start off maybe creating lesson plans, because that's something that they're going to have to do on a daily basis. Yep. I just watched a little video earlier today about different types of assessment, and it talked a little bit about case studies. So I like using case studies. I like having my students respond to a scenario. And then I'm able to, based on their response, I'm able to provide them with some feedback. Right. And I point out to them that this is the type of engagement that you will be expected to participate in when you get into the field. Okay, and I was going to ask you if you're dealing with pre-service teachers, or if it's teachers who are coming back for classes. So it's pre-service then, right? It's a little bit of both. I teach both undergrad and graduate. Okay. So for example, if I'm teaching a course in UBD, Understanding by Design, I once again I'll have them maybe adjust a lesson and add certain aspects of diversity. Right. So how would you target this lesson for special needs students or English language learners? Yeah. All right. Great. Thank you. Thank you for doing that. Anybody else want to make any comments? Okay. So I'm going to give you a chance. Let me see where I am here. To go back to the Padlet and then think about the activities or the assessments or anything that your learners produce in order to accomplish that. So I'm going to take us back in there, and we'll see if we have what other comments we have, or we can just speak up on it. What activities do you provide your learners? And do those activities provide you with the evidence that you need? When we're talking about the activities and the evidence, I typically try to use the term evidence with the faculty that I work with as a means of saying, because alignment isn't necessarily
a term that most of us are familiar with or use on a regular basis. We do in here, but not all faculty members do. So if I ask them to think about what their learners are producing for them and how, if it actually does accomplish what it is they want it to accomplish. Anybody have any comments? Want to either add in there or speak up? Either way is fine. Okay, so I'm gonna take us back to where we were then. So what I want you to think about then, as you think about those activities that you were using, is there a way to look at those activities and know exactly that your learners are right on track? Can you make any simple adjustments to accomplish that? And if so, what do you think they might be? How could you tweak those activities in a way that that you know that the learners are definitely accomplishing what it is you would like them to accomplish? Okay, so we're going to take a look at the flow of the course, and this is going to take us to the third question in there. I'm going to go back in there and give you a chance to jot some ideas down. If is it a new course or one that you've taught face-to-face? And how do you feel about the flow of the course? Now we're talking, instead of individual pieces of it, we're talking about the flow of the whole course. Does it get you where you want by the end of the course? This is question 3. How do you feel about the flow of the course you've been working on in? Does it accomplish what you need it to accomplish by the time at the ending of it? Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I have a gift. I actually have 2 gifts for you. You are the chosen ones. You have been selected to receive 2, not 1, but 2 superpowers based on your commitment to your students, because I know that you all are. And I'm going to share those with you in just a moment. So the gifts that I'm getting ready to present to you provide you with a common language, a way of truly looking at what it is you want your students to accomplish, their expectations. The terminology that we use is what is going to set up those expectations. And one of the gifts builds on a hierarchy going from easy to complex and or concrete to abstract. So in essence, the gifts, both of them, but the one in particular, provide you with empowerment. And so gift number 1, you've probably already figured out, is Bloom's Taxonomy. And this is the tool. I have, I'll show you the list in just a moment, and I have mine right here with me, and I always keep it handy when I'm working on a course or working with a faculty member, because the verb list, the terms that they share with us in this listing are the ways that we are able to clearly set up what our students, what we want our students to accomplish. So I'm going to go to share with you my copy of the list, and this is available if you're in the workshop. It's available in the workshop, but I will also make sure that we send it out with the resource information at the end. So this is the version that we typically use in here. And as you look online, you will find many, many variations of this. The verb lists are essentially the same, and the items on the left-hand side of this verb list, I'll scroll down, are the same, but you'll see it presented in a number of ways. And there's some really effective ones that are visual, a little bit more visual than this, although this is a pretty handy one to be able to use. So the use of this gives us the opportunity to actually create what we want our students to accomplish. And so we use this list as we're writing objectives. So I've put a couple of kind of random ones in here. The term that we use is fuzzy. So I've listed some, and I don't have, when we're working in WebEx, we don't have the opportunity to show things, the succession of things in PowerPoint. So my whole screen is there for you. So a fuzzy one would be present a clear understanding of listening concepts. What I put in as a possible, and if someone else has a better idea, please let me know, as a using some of Bloom's cognitive domain verbs to demonstrate listening concepts. So, and I'm not sure what that would be, but this did come from one that I saw at one point. Present a clear understanding of listening concepts. I have no clue what that means. It's what we tend to refer to as fuzzy, but we could be phrased as to demonstrate those listening concepts. I'm not sure exactly what that would be, but it's obviously a content area that I'm not that familiar with. The second one I put down is interact effectively within groups to accomplish tasks. We have no idea what interact effectively, I mean, we have an idea in our mind of what interact effectively would mean, but we don't have any clear indication of what that will look like when they have accomplished that. So I put a couple of them down. Create a presentation or a project through a cooperative learning activity. And then in addition to that, I put discuss the advantages and disadvantages of group work in an online course. Mary, if you are in here, did you want to add anything to that? Or anyone else? What would be another way of phrasing that? Interact effectively. What kind of a verb would you use in order to know that your students had indeed interacted effectively? The third one I literally saw in one, understand America's economic system. Whew, that is a tall order. And in my mind, that would be something that could certainly be an effective course level objective. And within the center and the faculty members that we work with, we try to discourage the use of the word understand in module level objectives, but it certainly would work, particularly in this case, as a course level objectives. So how would we then break it down into a module level? What would be something that you could use to make this one an effective module level objective? Perhaps describe, and I would say find some aspect of the economic system that's not quite so broad, some narrowed down perspective of the economic system to start out with, to describe, and then throughout the course there would be different aspects of it, so that by the end of the course, you could clearly state that they did understand the economic system because of the various components that they've used throughout there. So to me, that would be a way of breaking that down. The link that I have on here is the link to this, to the list that I showed you, and we will provide it for everyone at the end of the session. So, and again, and this is where Lisa was referring backward design, beginning with the end in mind, and this is from the design components course from Wiggins and McTighe, Understanding by Design. And this is seminal work in the field of education as far as figuring out the most appropriate way to design a course so that your students, by the end of it, definitely do understand. So when we begin with the end in mind, what is it we want them to accomplish? And then think about what would be acceptable evidence of that accomplishment. Then think about the learning experiences and the instruction that go together to make that happen. So backwards design, understanding by design, and that is from Wiggins and McTighe, Understanding by Design. Excellent book. So I am going to take from here, then take you to my next gift for you, which is our course design blueprint. This is a document that we have created within the Center for eLearning, although I suspect that other universities have some variation of this type of thing, but we use it as a tool to lay out a course. And when we are working on a course with faculty members, we work through this blueprint design. I'm going to show you the template for it in just a moment. But we work through the blueprint design before we ever put anything into Canvas. That said, it is also a continually evolving document throughout the course, because as you put things in there, you start to get a feel for the flow, how things work and how things fit together. And when you look at it, you can see, oh, wait a minute, this really belongs up in the second or third module instead of the seventh or eighth one. So it's an evolving process as you go throughout. It creates a visual, and most of us realize that the visual is the connection between visual and text is what really helps us learn. And so it creates a visual of the whole process, the whole overview of the process. So we think about the assessments and what type of evidence they provide for the learning, because that truly is what we want to make sure. We start out with objectives, course level objectives and module level objectives, and say by the end of this course, our students will. And so the blueprint and the module objectives within the blueprint gives us the evidence that, yes, indeed, by the end of the course, the students did. So by the flow and how we were able to lay it out. Bloom's, the Bloom's Big List, which is the one that I just showed you. And what I'm going to show you right now is the template for creating this blueprint. And of course, it's looks like a pretty bare document here. But it does indeed, as it builds, and as we build and put in the assessments and activities, we think about where we want them to go, put the course level objectives, and I'm going to show you in just a minute how we link those things together. This is an overview of the blueprint for the e-certification workshop. And so this gives you an idea of what, again, as I say, this is a document that we've created in here in order to show that connection between them. So you can see that in the module objectives is where we show the connection to the course level objectives. So we indicate that with this CO colon, which course level objectives that particular module objective links up to. And then through the assessments or activities and the content, we then use this coding to show that these items link to the course level objectives. And so if the content addresses course level objectives 1 and 2, and then the activity also addresses course level, module level, objectives 1 and 2, then once they have completed those things, we can clearly say that yes, they have accomplished the first part anyway of course level objectives 1 and 2. Does that make sense? Anybody have any questions or comments about that and how it works? I'm going to show you another example in just a moment, but I wanted to give you a chance to make a comment or to ask something about how that works. All right, good deal. So let me take you into the next one, and this is just an example and a way of showing how things lined up. So if indeed our desired result, remember, begin with the end in mind, is to identify structure for module objectives, which relates to course level objective number 2, then the evidence is going to be objectives that have been written in a specific way. And so the action that we're going to ask the students to do is to submit a document with those objectives written in that specific way. But before they do that, we will give them the content for it, the tools that we are using to get them to where they will be comfortable in writing those objectives. So we have included a video on creating learning objectives. We have the web links for Bloom's taxonomy verbs. And those are the tools that as the instructor, we have used to give them the content, the foundation, the information for being able to write those documents, write those objectives. Questions, comments? So perhaps it's time to give you a chance to try this out. So I am going to invite everyone who's with us to jump into the Padlet again. And I think Jade's going to give you the link again to it. Try things out. So this is my little cartoon, which was created with To-Do. And they are pretty easy to do if you haven't tried them. So the little student is saying, my wise friend, the wise old owl, of course, what's so important about all this curriculum stuff? And clearly, the answer to that question is, if you don't know where you're going, you're not going to be able to figure out how to get there. You have to know the destination in order to get there. So let's go in and hopefully you've been doing some writing in item number 4. So grab your Lego blocks or your computer, as the case may be in this, and start constructing. So item A would be your module. Item B would be the content, and item C would be the activities that are going to get them there. And you can identify them if you put your names down as you go in here, and then identify A, B, and C for your module. So I'm going to let you think about it and start working. Great, thank you. Okay, so I can tell that both Mary and Lisa are still working, and then we're going to give you both a chance to share. And I know there's others in here too. Please feel free to join in and share with us. Give us another one, because it's these examples and these opportunities to try it out that adds your ability to actually do it, make it happen. Okay, so Lisa, you want to talk about yours?
So I just threw out just a couple of things just to get the conversation going.
Okay,
An example of a recent module expectation, which would be like my learning objective for the unit or the module. Students need to assess the implications of cultural beliefs. Now, when you know, like you said, Judy, when we write objectives that are measurable, it helps us to identify where the student is at with the learning. And I really like the way you said it was a journey. I agree, and I think of education as a journey as well. I think the module expectations are really helpful for the instructor, right? It keeps us on track, right? And for the students, right? And so when we're looking at those taxonomies and making sure that they're at the right level of the the course level, we can tell the students, look, you need to show that you can do and that you know these pieces during this part of the course, and you're going to build. And I think it's great for students to understand. Not at the level that instructional designers and instructors would need to, but understand the blueprint, as you said, of the course. So students would know then, for example, at this module, that they need to be able to show that they can assess those implications of cultural beliefs and biases. The content to help them get there would be, information on race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, and academic ability, and so on, and then really get them through those activities to talk about it, to reflect and self-assess on their experience as a student and perhaps as a teacher, how, what they're learning in the course as far as all of those implications for those student groups, how those are impacting or can impact their practice in the classroom, because you have all those student groups all in one classroom and you've got to meet everyone's needs. So
absolutely.
So really it's massaging that information through activities, different levels of activities, like you were saying, to get them to really embrace that course content and make it their own. And then as you were saying, really give them some really good feedback throughout each module and building up to the end of the course about how they're doing with each of those modules, with each of those objectives through all of those activities.
And how they all link together. And you made a really important point that I wanted to reinforce, that, well, in our minds as educators, all of our courses should indeed be learner-centered, but online courses seem to be way more so learner-centered, because they have to really focus on what they want to accomplish by the end of the course. And it's an interesting perspective. All right, Mary, how's yours looking?
Hi. So it's a combination of what I'm taking and what I would like to do when I actually teach this class. So works of literature do not happen in a void, in a vacuum, and many times history and historical events actually do shape the narrative. So here's my objective. So my expectation is to have my students look at these historical events and see them represented or framed in a literary text. So that's my objective. And then the content would be the text or novel, whatever it is we're reading. And then, of course, we would have discussions on what the historical events are for that period through videos or newspaper clips or readings or different forms of ways to present that history to my students. And then I would like to see a timeline. I would like to see the flow of those events represented as an infographic. So, and I wanted to say that I really liked Lisa's intervention.
Yes.
I love the way she said that massaging the content through these activities, the fact that she said students need to make these their own
Yes.
by whichever activities make sense to them,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
the fact that she said constant feedback to build up towards the end of the course.
And that's huge. Our feedback and their opportunity to reflect on what they have done, continual reflection. And that's one of the areas that we tend to not focus on quite as much, or at least I tend to not focus on it quite as much. And it's so important, especially for someone going into the field of education.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm looking forward. This link is a live link, and anybody who hasn't posted can feel free to go back in and do so even after the session is over. So I'm going to take us back to where we were, and that is celebrating our success. The gifts of your Bloom's Taxonomy and your blueprint are what go together to create the success for you. So we are extremely thankful that you were here to receive those gifts, and we appreciate all that you have contributed. Coming up next week, we have a library resources session. The following week, we're doing a session on teamwork and collaboration. And the following week is spring break. So we look forward. I thoroughly enjoy having all of you visit with us, and look forward to sharing these other wonderful experiences with you. I have the resources list at the end of this, and I will make sure that they get sent out to you later on today. So thank you so much for joining us and for your input in it. Thank you.